We're going to talk about camera adapters today, predominantly the adapters for your lens to your camera. There's all different kinds, there's all different styles, and they all do something completely different. Predominantly what we're going to talk about is the lens adapter that will adapt one lens mount to your camera. So if you have a brand new camera that requires a specific mount like this Nikon Z mount, and you have some Nikon lenses you want to put on that camera, you have to buy an adapter to adapt the old style lens to the new style camera. So let's get to it. So let's briefly discuss some of the adapters. These are extension tubes. These actual tubes are from my very first camera, for my Fujica camera, and they're different millimeters of tubing that goes between the flange on your camera and the back of the camera lens. And because it's extending that camera lens out, it is affecting the magnification of what that lens is doing. So extension tubes are predominantly used when you want to do magnification, when you want to magnify what the lens is picking up. The light's not affected because it's just a tube. There's no glass element in these at all. It's just putting the lens a little farther away from the front of the camera. Another type of adapter that you can put on your camera is what is known as a teleconverter. And what that does is it multiplies by a factor the millimeter range of your camera. They look something like this. And there's all different variations of it, and there's all different magnification factors. Now these adapters do have a glass element in them to double or 1.4 times or whatever the factor is, 3 times. That lens is in there to create that millimeter range that you're looking for. So if you have a 200 millimeter lens and you have a 2X adapter to put on it, you're now going to get 400 millimeters out of that lens. Once again, since there is a glass element in there, it's going to reduce the amount of light by a specific factor that lens is getting. So that's what a teleconverter is. Let's talk about what the opposite of a teleconverter is. Now, the opposite of the teleconverter is a lens that's called an accelerator, or it's sometimes known as a speed boost or a turbo. And it does almost exactly the opposite of a teleconverter. It reduces the image size. Why would you want that? Why would you want to purposely make the image smaller? Well, if you have a 50 millimeter lens on your full frame camera, you're getting that 50 millimeter range. Now, if you put an adapter on, you put that 50 millimeter lens on your crop sensor camera, you're getting closer to 75 millimeters now. You're not getting your 50 millimeters. Your nifty 50 isn't doing what it was intended to do. Or if you want to go to a 4/3 camera, once again, you're not getting that millimeter range from that 50 millimeter lens. So what do? You put on one of these speed boosters and it will reduce the image and give you the full focal plane, the full field of view that 50 millimeter lens is designed for. And that's what you're expecting, the 50 millimeter. So you put these on to get the imagery from the lens, even though you're putting it on a camera that may not be a crop sensor or a 4/3 camera. So once again, they're doing the opposite. They're creating that field of view that you want from your lens. Now let's talk about this other type of adapter. This is the type of adapter that will change a lens mount from one mount to another mount. And they come in all different kinds of variations. As a matter of fact, when you go to purchase one, since there are such a variety of these things, you need to be very careful that you're going the direction you want to go to get your imagery the way you want it. This right here will take a Canon EF lens and convert it over to the new R mount. And this one right here will take the Nikon lenses and convert them over to the Z mount. There's all types of these conversions to convert one lens mount to mount onto your newer camera. So the question comes to mind, if you put this adapter on, as you can see, there's some depth to this. Now, once again, these adapters that are just adapting one type of mount to another type of mount don't have a glass element in it. So the question comes to mind, since you're adding this extra amount, since you're adding this 43 millimeters or this 3/4 of an inch to the camera, is it going to act like the extension tube? Is it going to create a magnification effect? Well, it may or may not. So let's go to the computer for a minute, and I'm going to give you an example that I found that I think explains this perfectly. Here's an example I would like to show you of how the adapter may or may not affect your imagery. In this example, on the right-hand side, we have a Canon camera with a Canon 50 millimeter lens on it, your nifty 50. And if you notice, the lenses are in the same exact location to each other. They're on the same plane. To give you the example how the adapter may or may not affect your imagery. The distance between the flange plane, the exterior of your camera where the lens mounts, and the focal plane is set up by the lens to create your image. So it requires this distance for you to get the 50 millimeter field of view. Now on this focal plane on your camera, there is an insignia, and that insignia is a line with a circle in the center of it. That insignia indicates where your sensor is, or it indicates, if you're using film, it indicates where that image is going to be exposed onto that film. That's your focal plane. So on a full-size camera with a 50 millimeter lens, you're going to get that 50 millimeter field of view. Now let's move over to the example on the left-hand side. And now we're putting this Canon lens on a Sony. So we're going to put on an adapter that will adapt the 50 millimeter lens to a Sony mirrorless camera. And the adapter, if you notice, is going to take up the difference of area that was in the example on our right, because the focal plane and the flange plane are closer together on a mirrorless camera. Mirrorless cameras, their lenses are designed for that smaller distance. But when you put the adapter on, now you've created the same distance. So it's not going to affect the imagery. You're going to get that 50 millimeter field of view out of that lens. Let's go back to the right-hand side, the other example. Let's say this is a Sony camera, and it's a full-size FE full-frame camera, and you want to put this Canon 50 millimeter lens on it. Well, the adapter is going to take up another 3/4 of an inch, 43 millimeters, and it is going to affect your imagery in this situation, because you're going from either a Canon or a Nikon lens, and now you're going to the full-frame Sony camera, and you have that extra amount of room, so it will affect your imagery. When you're purchasing an adapter, the range of the price of these things can go all over the place, but predominantly the bottom end, the bottom range are manual adapters. In that case, if you buy that, there are no electronic contact points in the lens, so your camera is no longer communicating with the lens. They're less expensive, but you've lost that communication. So all the functions that your lens normally does, the autofocus functions, you're going to lose that. So if that's not important to you to have the lens working the way it was designed to work and you just need a manual, that's a good choice then, because it's substantially less expensive. But I would recommend getting the ones that have the contact points in it so that you get the full functionality out of your lens. Yes, they're a little more expensive, but it's easier to go backwards than frontwards. If you don't need the automatic function, if you're shooting manual and you don't really want things to be adjusting automatically, you can always click your lens into manual. But you don't have that option if you purchase one of the adapters and it's just manual. You are stuck on manual. So I would recommend you go with the ones that have the electronic contacts and will have the full functionality of that lens available. So to wrap it up, expansion tubes, teleconverters, speed boosters, they're all going to affect your imagery because of the way they're designed, and you're doing that on purpose. You specifically purchase those to create those situations. When it comes to the adapter that will adapt your older lenses to maybe a new camera, may or may not affect your imagery. Well, I hope you found this information helpful, and if you wouldn't mind, please subscribe, like, or share this channel. If you have any recommendations or things that you would like for me to make a video of, or you have any questions, leave it in the comments. A lot of the equipment that I use is in the comment section if you'd like to check those things out. And Thanks for watching this video, and I hope you have a great day.